Logan Pierce had this habit of leaning against door frames like he was posing for a magazine cover nobody asked him to be in. He did it that Tuesday morning, coffee cup in one hand, checking his Apple Watch with the other, while I was elbow deep in server diagnostics that should have been handled 3 weeks ago. "Charlotte," he said, drawing out my name like he was about to deliver bad news wrapped in corporate speak. "Got a second?" I didn't look up from my screen. The production database was throwing errors every 11 minutes, and I was the only one in the building who seemed to care. "Kind of in the middle of something, Logan." He walked in anyway, set his coffee on my desk without asking, right next to my keyboard. The mug had his initials monogrammed on it. Like he was a luxury brand. "So here's the thing," he started, hands in his pockets now, rocking back on his heels. "We're bringing in some fresh perspectives on the infrastructure team. New blood, you know. Keep things innovative." I stopped typing. Looked at him. He smiled like he'd just offered me a promotion instead of what this actually was. "My name is Charlotte Brooks. I'm 34 years old. I live in Austin, Texas, and for the last 9 years, I've been the backbone of the engineering department at Vanguard Systems, a mid-sized SaaS company that pretends it's a startup even though half the executives have been here since dial-up was a thing. I built their cloud migration strategy from scratch. I architected the API framework that every product team relies on. I've been on call more nights than I've slept through. And now Logan Pierce, who got hired as CTO 8 months ago after a stint at some Silicon Valley company that folded before it shipped a product, was telling me about fresh perspectives. "Who are we bringing in?" I asked, keeping my voice flat. "Jacob Turner. He's coming from a really exciting startup in San Francisco. Tons of energy. Really gets the modern DevOps culture." Jacob Turner. I'd seen his LinkedIn. 26 years old, 2 years of experience, and a profile picture taken at Burning Man. His last job title was Growth Engineer, which as far as I could tell meant he wrote blog posts and occasionally pushed code someone else reviewed. "What's his role going to be?" I asked. Logan's smile tightened just a fraction. "Lead architect. He'll be overseeing the infrastructure roadmap, working directly with me on strategic initiatives." Lead architect. My role. The one I'd been doing without the title for 3 years while Logan kept telling me we were still figuring out the org chart. "And what about me?" I asked. "You'll still be senior systems engineer," he said like that meant anything. "But I think this is a great opportunity for you to focus on execution. You're so good at the hands-on stuff, Charlotte. Let Jacob handle the vision side and you can keep doing what you do best." What I did best. Like I was some sort of code monkey who couldn't think past the next sprint. I nodded once. Didn't argue. Didn't push back. Logan took that as agreement, grabbed his coffee and walked out, already pulling his phone from his pocket before he'd cleared the doorway. I sat there for a full minute staring at the error logs, watching the same database timeout repeat itself over and over. Then I opened a new folder on my personal drive and labeled it Receipts. Jacob showed up the following Monday with a backpack covered in startup stickers and a wireless keyboard that clicked so loud you could hear it from the break room. He set up at the desk directly across from mine, which until last week had belonged to Arya, a solid engineer who'd quietly left after her 3rd request for a raise got denied. "Hey Charlotte," he said way too loud for 9am. "Logan said you're the one who knows where all the bodies are buried. I'm going to need you to bring me up to speed on like everything." I looked at him. He was grinning, eager, completely unaware that he'd just been handed my job. "Sure," I said. "What do you want to start with?" "Honestly, I don't even know what half our systems do. Can you just, walk me through the architecture?" I spent the next 2 hours explaining the stack we'd built, the decisions that went into it, the technical debt we were managing, the deployment pipeline I'd automated, the monitoring systems I'd set up. Jacob nodded a lot, took notes on his iPad and asked questions that made it very clear he'd never worked on anything at scale. "Wait, so why do we need a reverse proxy?" he asked at one point. I explained it. "Oh, right, he said like he'd known all along. "That makes sense." By lunch, I'd documented every question he asked in a private note on my phone. Not because I'm petty. Because I'm thorough. That afternoon, Logan called an all-hands meeting. The engineering team crammed into the main conference room, and Logan stood at the front with a slide deck that had way too many animations. "I want to introduce you all to Jacob Turner," Logan said, gesturing like a game show host. "Jacob's going to be leading our infrastructure evolution as we scale into the next phase of growth." Jacob waved. A few people clapped politely. Jacob's got a ton of experience with modern cloud-native architectures, Logan continued, and he's going to help us move faster, iterate smarter, and really embrace a culture of innovation. I bit the inside of my cheek. Logan had used the word innovation 4 times in the last 90 seconds. After the meeting, I went back to my desk and opened Slack. There was already a message from Jacob in the engineering channel. Jacob Turner, super excited to be here. Can't wait to collaborate with everyone. Also, quick question. Does anyone have documentation on how our database sharding works? I'd written that documentation. It was in the shared drive, clearly labeled with diagrams and code examples. I'd even presented it at a lunch and learn 6 months ago. I didn't respond. I just watched as 3 other engineers sent him the link I'd created. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in how to take credit for other people's work without technically lying. Jacob would ask me a question, I'd explain the answer, and then an hour later he'd be in a meeting with Logan presenting it like he'd figured it out himself. I watched him do it with the API gateway redesign I'd been proposing for months. I sat in on a call where he walked Logan through his idea for improving our deployment process, which was word for word the plan I'd put in a doc 3 weeks earlier. He even used the same terminology. Logan ate it up. This is exactly the kind of forward thinking we need, he said, nodding like a proud parent. I stayed quiet. Took notes. Saved Slack messages. Downloaded email threads. One Friday afternoon, I was in the middle of fixing a critical bug in the authentication service when Logan appeared in the doorway again. This time he wasn't smiling. Charlotte, can we talk? He said. My office. I saved my work and followed him down the hall. His office was all glass walls and motivational posters. There was a framed quote on his desk that said, "Move fast and break things." Real original. He sat down, gestured for me to sit across from him, and folded his hands like he was about to deliver a performance review. So, he said, I've been getting some feedback. I waited. Some of the team has noticed you've been a little resistant to the changes we're making. Not super collaborative. I kept my face neutral. What changes are we talking about? Just the general direction. The new leadership structure. Jacob's been mentioning that you seem reluctant to share information. That was Rich. The guy who spent 2 weeks asking me to explain things he should have already known was now saying I wasn't collaborative. I've answered every question Jacob's asked me, I said evenly. Right, but it's more about attitude, Logan said. It's about being a team player. We're trying to build a culture here where everyone's excited about the future, and I need to know you're on board. There was the setup. The slow push toward the exit. I'm on board, I said, even though we both knew it didn't matter what I said. Logan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Good. I'm glad to hear it. Just keep that in mind going forward, okay? I nodded. Stood up. Walked out. Back at my desk, I opened the receipts folder and created a new subfolder. I labeled it Timeline. It started small. My name disappeared from the quarterly roadmap presentation. Then I stopped getting invited to architecture planning meetings. Then Jacob started assigning tasks to engineers who reported to me without looping me in. When I brought it up to Logan, he said, "Oh, that's just Jacob being proactive. You're still part of the team, Charlotte. Don't overthink it." But I wasn't overthinking it. I was watching it happen in real time. The breaking point came 3 weeks later. I was working late, finishing a deployment that had been delayed because Jacob had pushed broken code to production and then left for the day without telling anyone. I'd spent 4 hours rolling it back, fixing his mistakes and making sure our clients didn't notice. I saved the commit logs. Every single one. The next morning there was an email in my inbox. Subject line, restructuring announcement. I opened it. Skimmed the corporate jargon. Got to the part that mattered. As part of our continued evolution, we're realigning some roles within the engineering department. Charlotte Brooks will be transitioning to a new position focusing on legacy system maintenance and support. We're grateful for her contributions and excited about this next chapter. Legacy system maintenance. That's corporate speak for, we're putting you in a corner until you quit. I read it twice. Then I checked the recipients list. It had gone to the entire engineering department. 43 people. They'd announced my demotion to everyone before telling me directly. I closed my laptop. Walked to the bathroom. Stared at myself in the mirror for a long moment. Then I went back to my desk, packed up my things and left without saying a word to anyone. At home I sat on my couch and opened my laptop. I didn't cry. Didn't call anyone. I just opened the receipts folder and started organizing. Every Slack message. Every email. Every commit log. Every meeting note where Jacob had presented my work as his own. Every time Logan had promised me a promotion and then hired someone else. Every piece of documentation I'd created that was now being used to make me obsolete. I had everything. Then I opened my employment contract. I'd signed it 9 years ago, but I'd kept a copy. I read through it slowly, carefully, looking for anything that might matter. And there was. Section 12. Termination clause. Any material change in job responsibilities or reporting structure that results in a de facto demotion must be communicated in writing with at least 30 days' notice, or the employee is entitled to severance equivalent to 6 months' salary. I checked my calendar. The restructuring email had been sent today. My new role started Monday. 4 days' notice. I read the clause again. Then I pulled out my phone and started searching for employment attorneys in Austin. I found her name on a forum for tech workers who'd been screwed over by their employers. Colleen Hartley. Her website was plain, no flashy graphics, just a list of cases she'd won and a contact form. I filled it out at midnight. By 9 a.m. the next morning she'd called me back. Charlotte. Her voice was warm but direct. Tell me what happened. I walked her through everything. The demotion disguised as a restructuring. The new hire who'd taken my role. The email sent to the entire department. The 4 days' notice. She listened without interrupting. When I finished there was a pause. Do you have your employment contract? She asked. Right in front of me. Read me section 12. I did. Another pause. Then she said, Charlotte, they screwed up. Badly. How badly? Badly enough that you could walk away with 6 months severance and possibly more if we can prove retaliation or discrimination. My heart rate picked up. What do I need to do? Send me everything. Every email, every Slack message, every document. I want timestamps, names, dates. If you've been keeping records, now's the time to hand them over. I have records, I said. Good. Send them today. We're going to file a demand letter on Monday. I spent the entire weekend compiling files. The receipts folder turned into a 47-page PDF with an index, organized by date and category. Emails where Logan promised me a promotion. Meeting notes where Jacob presented my work. Commit logs showing who actually wrote the code. Slack threads where I explained concepts Jacob later claimed as his own ideas. By Sunday night I'd sent Colleen everything. She called me back an hour later. This is airtight, she said. I've seen a lot of employment cases, Charlotte, and this one is gift-wrapped. They didn't just violate your contract. They documented every step of it. What happens now? I'm sending a demand letter to their legal department first thing Monday morning. We're asking for full severance, back pay for the responsibility gap, and a release from any non-compete clauses. Will they fight it? They'll try, she said. But they won't win. Monday morning I didn't go into the office. I stayed home, drank coffee and waited. At 10:17 a.m. my phone buzzed. It was Colleen. They got the letter, she said. Their general counsel just called me. Already? Yep. And he sounded nervous. What did he say? He said they'd need time to review. I told him he has 48 hours to respond or we file in court. He asked if we'd be willing to mediate. I thought about Logan sitting in his glass office, probably getting chewed out by someone higher up the chain. I thought about Jacob, who had no idea this was coming. I thought about the restructuring email sent to 43 people without my knowledge. Tell him no, I said. Colleen laughed. I like you, Charlotte. I'll call you when they respond. 2 days later I got another call. This time Colleen sounded satisfied. They're offering a settlement, she said. 4 months severance, full benefits through the end of the year and a mutual release. That's less than the contract says. I know. Which is why I told them to try again. What did they say? They said they'd need to escalate to their executive team. I told them they have until Friday. Friday came. No response. So Colleen filed the lawsuit. The complaint was 23 pages long. Breach of contract. Constructive dismissal. Retaliation. She'd included excerpts from my documentation, time-stamped emails, and a detailed breakdown of how my role had been systematically dismantled. We filed it in Travis County District Court on a Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon it was public record. By Wednesday someone had leaked it to a tech industry blog. The headline read, Vanguard Systems CTO accused of pushing out senior engineer to make room for junior hire. I didn't post it, didn't share it. But within 6 hours, it had 14,000 views and 300 comments. Most of them were from other engineers sharing their own stories of getting pushed out by younger, less experienced hires. Logan's LinkedIn profile started getting flooded with messages. I didn't look, but a former coworker texted me a screenshot. Someone had left a comment on one of his posts. Is this how you treat engineers with a decade of experience? He deleted the comment. Then he disabled comments entirely. Thursday morning I got a call from Vanguard's legal team. Not Colleen. Ms. Brooks, the voice said, clipped and formal. This is Raymond Fletcher, Deputy General Counsel for Vanguard Systems. I'm calling to see if we can resolve this matter without further litigation. You'll need to speak to my attorney, I said. I understand, but I thought it might be helpful to have a conversation directly. No, I said. Talk to Colleen Hartley. She represents me. I hung up. 10 minutes later Colleen called. They just tried to contact you, didn't they? How did you know? Because they're panicking. Don't engage with them directly. Let me handle it. What did they say to you? They want to settle. For real this time. How much? 6 months severance, full benefits, a mutual non-disparagement agreement, and they'll release you from the non-compete. I thought about it. That was exactly what the contract said I was owed. Counter, I said. 8 months and I want a neutral reference letter. Colleen paused. You sure? Yes. All right. I'll send it over. They responded in 4 hours. Agreed to everything. They're scared, Colleen said when she called me back. The publicity is killing them. They want this gone. Do we take it? That's up to you. We could push for more, but it'll mean depositions, discovery, months of litigation. This offer gets you out clean and paid. I thought about it. About sitting in a deposition across from Logan. About spending months rehashing every email, every meeting, every time I'd been overlooked. Let's take it, I said. Smart choice. We signed the settlement agreement the following week. 8 months salary. Full benefits. A reference letter that said I'd been a valued contributor. And a complete release from the non-compete clause. I deposited the check on a Friday afternoon. Then I went home, opened a bottle of wine, and sat on my balcony watching the sunset. For the first time in months I wasn't angry. I was just free. But the story didn't end there. 2 weeks after the settlement cleared, I got an email from a recruiter. Subject line, Opportunity at Catalyst Labs. Catalyst Labs was a Series B startup in Denver. They were building cloud infrastructure tools for enterprises. The CTO had seen my GitHub profile and wanted to talk. I took the call. By the end of it, they'd offered me a position as principal engineer, leading a team of 12, with equity and a salary that was 40% higher than what I'd been making at Vanguard. I accepted. But before I started, I did one more thing. I went back to the receipts folder. I opened every document, every email, every Slack thread I'd saved. And I wrote a Medium post. I didn't name names. Didn't mention Vanguard. Didn't trash Logan or Jacob. I just told the story. How I'd been pushed out. How I'd documented everything. How I'd fought back and won. I titled it, How I Survived a Corporate Squeeze-Out and What I Learned. I published it on a Sunday night. By Monday morning it had 50,000 views. By Tuesday it had been shared on Hacker News, Reddit, and LinkedIn. By Wednesday it had 200,000 views. The comments section was full of people sharing their own stories. Engineers who'd been overlooked. Women who'd watched men get promoted over them. People who'd been told they weren't culture fits, when what that really meant was they weren't young and cheap enough. I didn't respond to the comments. I just let it sit there, a public record of what had happened. And then I moved on. 3 months into my new role at Catalyst Labs, I got a LinkedIn message from someone I didn't recognize. The profile picture showed a guy in his early 30s wearing a hoodie. Hi Charlotte, my name is Jacob Turner. I think we worked together briefly at Vanguard. I wanted to reach out and apologize. I stared at the message for a long time. I didn't realize at the time how much of your work I was taking credit for, he continued. I was young and stupid and just trying to prove myself. I read your Medium post and it made me realize how badly I messed up. I'm sorry. I hope you're doing well. I thought about responding. Thought about telling him exactly how much damage he'd done, how many nights I'd stayed up fixing his mistakes, how many meetings I'd sat through watching him present my ideas as his own. But I didn't. I just archived the message and moved on. Some apologies come too late to matter. 6 months after that, I was in a conference room in Denver, presenting our new infrastructure platform to a room full of potential clients. My team had built it from the ground up. No cutting corners. No taking credit for other people's work. Just solid engineering and collaboration. One of the clients, a VP of engineering from a Fortune 500 company, stopped me mid-presentation. Wait, she said. Are you the Charlotte Brooks? The one who wrote that article about getting pushed out? I paused. Yes. She smiled. That article changed how we handle promotions and role changes at our company. We rewrote our entire engineering career ladder because of it. Thank you. I didn't know what to say, so I just nodded and kept going with the presentation. Afterward, my CTO at Catalyst pulled me aside. Her name was Nina Okonkwo, and she was the kind of leader I'd always wished I'd had at Vanguard. That was a hell of a presentation, she said. Thanks. When I hired you, I read that Medium post. I wanted to make sure you knew that wouldn't happen here. I appreciate that. She looked at me for a moment. You deserved better than what they gave you. Yeah, I said. I did. But you're here now. And you're building something great. I smiled. Yeah. I am. A year later, I was sitting in my home office in Denver working on a Saturday morning because I actually wanted to, not because I had to. My phone buzzed with a news alert. Vanguard Systems faces class action lawsuit over age discrimination and wrongful termination. I clicked on the article. Apparently, 6 former employees had banded together to sue the company. The lead plaintiff was Arya, the engineer who'd left right before Jacob showed up. The lawsuit cited a pattern of pushing out experienced engineers in favor of younger, cheaper hires. It mentioned restructuring announcements sent without proper notice. It referenced my case, which had been settled but was now part of the public record. I scrolled down. There was a quote from Logan Pierce, who was apparently no longer the CTO. These allegations are baseless and do not reflect our company values. We remain committed to fostering an inclusive and equitable workplace. I closed the article. Didn't share it. Didn't comment. Just went back to work. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just building something better and moving on. 2 years after I left Vanguard, Catalyst Labs got acquired. The deal was worth $340 million and every employee with equity got a payout. My share was enough to pay off my student loans, buy a house, and still have money left over. I didn't throw a party. Didn't post about it on social media. I just deposited the check, sat on my couch, and thought about how differently things could have gone if I hadn't kept those receipts. If I hadn't documented every Slack message, every email, every moment where I'd been overlooked or undermined. If I hadn't found Colleen. If I hadn't been willing to fight. I thought about all the engineers out there who were going through what I went through. Who were watching someone else take credit for their work. Who were being told they weren't culture fits, or that they'd peaked, or that the company was going in a different direction. So I did something I hadn't planned on doing. I started a newsletter. I called it Receipts, a guide to protecting your career in tech. The first post was about documentation. How to keep records without being paranoid. What to save. What matters in a legal dispute. How to organize it so it's useful if you ever need it. I sent it to 50 people. Friends, former coworkers, people who'd reached out after reading my Medium post. Within a week, I had 500 subscribers. Within a month, I had 5,000. People started forwarding it to their teams. Managers started using it as a resource. Law firms started recommending it to clients. I kept writing. 1 post a week. Stories from my own experience, advice from employment lawyers, case studies of other people who'd fought back and won. And every week I got emails from people telling me I'd helped them. That they'd used my advice to negotiate a better severance. That they'd documented something that ended up mattering. That they'd stood up for themselves because they'd seen me do it. That felt better than any acquisition payout. 3 years after leaving Vanguard, I got invited to speak at a conference in San Francisco. The topic was building resilient engineering cultures. But what they really wanted was for me to tell my story. I almost said no. I'd moved on. I was happy. I didn't want to be known as that person who got screwed over and sued. But then I thought about all the emails I'd gotten from people who felt stuck, who felt like they had no options, who thought fighting back meant throwing their career away. So I said yes. The room was packed. 300 engineers, managers, executives. I stood on stage with a microphone and a slide deck that I'd rewritten 4 times. I told them about Logan. About the restructuring email and the demand letter and the settlement. I told them about the receipts folder and how documentation had saved me. I told them about the Medium post and the newsletter and how many people had reached out with their own stories. And then I told them the part I'd never written about publicly. When I got pushed out of Vanguard, I said, I thought my career was over. I thought I'd be blacklisted. I thought no one would want to hire someone who'd sued their employer. I paused. The room was silent. But that's not what happened. I got hired at a better company. I built a better team. I got a payout from an acquisition that changed my life. And I started a newsletter that's helped thousands of people protect themselves. I looked out at the audience. So here's what I want you to take away from this. If you're being pushed out, if your work is being stolen, if you're being undermined or overlooked or told you're not good enough, document it. Keep records. Find a lawyer. Fight back. I clicked to the next slide. It was a screenshot of my employment contract with Section 12 highlighted. Because here's the thing, I said. They're counting on you not knowing your rights. They're counting on you being too scared or too tired to fight. They're counting on you to just accept it and move on. I clicked again. The next slide was a photo of the settlement check. Don't give them that satisfaction. The room erupted in applause. Afterward, people lined up to talk to me. Some wanted advice. Some wanted to share their own stories. Some just wanted to say thank you. One woman, probably in her late 20s, waited until everyone else had left. She looked nervous. Can I ask you something? She said. Of course. Do you ever regret it? Fighting back, I mean. Was it worth it? I thought about it. About the months of stress. The depositions that never happened. The nights I couldn't sleep. The moments where I wondered if I should have just taken the first settlement offer and moved on. Yeah, I said. It was worth it. She nodded like she'd been hoping I'd say that. I'm going through something similar right now, she said quietly. At my company. They're pushing me out for someone younger. Are you documenting it? I started last week. After I read your article. I smiled. Good. Keep going. And if you need help, reach out. I know some good lawyers. She thanked me and left, and I stood there for a moment, alone in the empty conference room. That's when I realized something. Vanguard didn't just take my job. They gave me a purpose. And in the end, that was worth more than any settlement. 4 years after I left Vanguard, the company went through another round of layoffs. This time, Logan Pierce was one of the people let go. I found out through LinkedIn. Someone had posted a screenshot of an internal memo, and Logan's name was on the list. I didn't feel happy about it. Didn't feel vindicated. I just felt nothing. He'd made his choices. I'd made mine. And we'd both ended up where we deserved to be. I closed LinkedIn and went back to work. I was building something new, something I actually cared about. And this time no one was going to take it away from me. Because I'd learned the most important lesson of my career. Document everything. Trust no one. And never, ever assume they'll do the right thing. If you want to survive in this industry, you have to be willing to fight for yourself. No one else is going to do it for you. 5 years later, I was sitting in my home office when I got an email from a law firm I didn't recognize. Subject line, request for expert testimony. I opened it. They were representing a group of engineers in a class action lawsuit against a major tech company. Age discrimination, wrongful termination, the usual. They'd read my Medium post and wanted to know if I'd be willing to testify as an expert witness about industry practices around role restructuring and documentation. I read the email twice. Then I called Colleen. Should I do this? I asked. Do you want to? I don't know. I've moved on. I'm happy. Do I want to drag myself back into this? She was quiet for a moment. Charlotte, you know better than almost anyone what it's like to get pushed out. And you know how to fight back. If you don't help these people, who will? He was right. I called the law firm back and said yes. The trial took 6 months. I spent hours reviewing documents, sitting in depositions, explaining to lawyers how engineering teams work and why certain practices constitute constructive dismissal. And when I finally sat on the witness stand, the defense attorney tried to discredit me. Ms. Brooks, he said, flipping through his notes, isn't it true that you sued your former employer for wrongful termination? Yes. And isn't it true that you settled that case? Yes. So you have a financial interest in these kinds of lawsuits, don't you? I looked at him. No. I have an interest in holding companies accountable when they break the law. He tried again. But you were paid a significant settlement, weren't you? I was paid what my contract said I was owed. Nothing more. And now you're being paid to testify here, correct? I'm being compensated for my time as an expert witness, yes. Just like every other expert in this courtroom. He moved on. But I could tell I'd rattled him. The jury deliberated for 3 days. When they came back, they ruled in favor of the plaintiffs. The company was ordered to pay $18 million in damages. I didn't get any of that money. But I got something better. I got to watch a room full of engineers realize that they didn't have to accept being pushed out. That they could fight back. That they could win. And that was enough. Now, 7 years after leaving Vanguard, I run my own consulting firm. We help companies build equitable engineering cultures. We train managers on how to handle role transitions without creating legal liability. We teach engineers how to document their work and protect their careers. I have a team of 6. All of them are people who've been through what I went through. All of them are passionate about making sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. We're not a big company. We're not trying to be. But we're profitable, we're growing, and we're making a difference. And every time I get an email from someone who used our resources to negotiate a better outcome, or who stood up for themselves because they saw me do it, I'm reminded why I started this in the first place. Not because I wanted revenge. Because I wanted to make sure the next person didn't have to go through what I did. Last month, I got a message on LinkedIn from someone named Cara Winters. She said she used to work at Vanguard. She'd left around the same time I did, pushed out in a similar restructuring. I just wanted you to know, she wrote, that your article gave me the courage to fight back. I documented everything, hired a lawyer, and settled for 8 months severance. I'm at a new company now and I'm so much happier. Thank you. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I wrote back. I'm glad you're in a better place. You deserved better than what they gave you. Keep fighting the good fight. She replied immediately. I will. And if I ever see someone else going through it, I'll make sure they know they're not alone. I smiled. That's how it spreads. One person at a time. One story at a time. One fight at a time. Vanguard thought they could erase